forensics lab people, did ballistics lab people. And one day I was riding around to Boston with a sheriff's deputy in his car. And he took me out to a lake called Lake Travis, just outside of Boston. And he told me the story about how this particular lake used to be a river. And then they built a dam, and they flooded the entire valley. So that even today, at the bottom of the lake, in 200 feet of water, there's a forest of pecan trees. And I said, wow, can you scuba dive down there? The deputy said, well, you can, but it's very dangerous. In fact, one time, back in the 1970s, 2 scuba divers went down there, and only one came back. 20 years later, another scuba diver was down there and found the guy's body, perfectly preserved, tangled in a pecan tree. Now, when I heard that creepy story, I said, that is awesome. I have to use that. And so I took scuba diving lessons, and I went down to Lake Travis to check it out, and I ended up writing this book, which is about a killer who's hiding his victims in the trees at the bottom of Lake Travis. That was some of the creepiest scenes I've ever written. Some of these books were even published in foreign languages. There is my second book. That's a Whitworth's two-step. Can you tell what language that is? What is
Japanese.
Japanese, right. I don't know if you've ever seen a Japanese book before, but unlike the American books, they're sort of backwards plots. The front cover is the back. By the way, I just assumed that the title says Widower's Two-Step, and then someone who knows Japanese said, oh no, that says Honky Tonk Girl. I just decided to change the title and not tell me. And if you look inside the book, you will notice that in Japan, they don't read right to left, they read up to down in columns. One time I showed that book at a school visit I was doing in California, and this girl in the front row said, oh, so that's why. I said, what? She said, I was on the plane with somebody and they were reading in Japanese and they kept going. Anyway, all this time I was a teacher. There's a picture of me in my classroom when I taught 8th grade, 6th grade. Can you tell what the posters are above my whiteboard? Ah, Egyptian, yes, and we'll come back to that in a second. But while I was writing these adult books, something happened that I hadn't anticipated. One of the 8th grade girls in my class, she raised her hand and said, ooh, Mr. Riordan, I want to do a book report on one of your books. Can I read Big Red Tequila? And I got this terrified look on my face. I said, no, absolutely not. That's not appropriate. There's bad language, there's violence. The kids' eyes were like, really? You can guess what happened. They all went back, they bought the book, highlighting the bad words. It wasn't real cool. And again they said, well, Mr. Riordan, you're writing books and you teach kids. Why aren't you putting the two things together? Why aren't you writing for us? I said, well, I don't know. I don't have any ideas. That changed when my own son became school age. Now, I have 2 boys, Haley and Patrick. And Haley, when he was in 1st grade, he was having a tough time in school. There's a picture of him in 1st grade. I know, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't like reading. He didn't like writing. We didn't know what was going on. Well, it turns out he's dyslexic and he has ADHD, which made a lot of sense. Okay, well, of course, reading is hard. That makes sense now. Of course, he's having trouble in class because he has trouble sitting still. No wonder. But for me, an English teacher, it was really tough to think that my own kid would grow up not liking reading. I used to read to him forever, even when he was a baby. Whoa, go on back. We used to read together. There's me and him as a baby reading Thomas the Tank Engine. I said, isn't there anything you like at school? He said, well, we're doing this one unit that's pretty cool. It's on Greek mythology. In fact, that's a picture of me and Haley doing his project. They dressed up as Greek gods, and it was like a wax museum. So they had these fake buttons at their feet, and you press the button, and each kid would recite their lines. So he was Hades, Lord of the Underworld. Zeus, the Lord of the sky, Athena, Ares, Poseidon, the god of the sea. Sadly, I ran out of storage. So he said, Dad, tell me another one tonight. I said, well, bad news, buddy. There aren't any more. There haven't been any new ones in 2,000 years. He said, well, you just make one up then. Like, okay, make up a Greek myth. But I thought about that. I thought about the stories my own grandfather used to tell me, and I thought about Alien and how he had ADHD and dyslexia and how tough that was for him. I thought about Greek mythology. It all sort of came together in my head, and I made up a story off the top of my head. I said, okay, well, one day there was this boy named Percy Jackson. But you know what? He found out that if you have those two conditions, that could be a sign that you're very special indeed. You might be a demigod. Your dad or your mom might be a Greek god. You love that idea. So I made up this story off the top of my head. How Percy Jackson goes to this Camp Half-Blood, and he meets Annabelle. He finds out that his teacher is actually Chiron, who is a centaur, of course, from the waist down. All back there. He's got his friend Grover, who's a goat from the waist down. I said the Cyclops is actually his brother. So, when I was done telling him the story, he told me that I should write it down. He said, well, okay, I'll try. I'm kind of busy. I'm already teaching full time. I'm ready to look at you already. But I'll try. I did. I called it the lightning thief. But I didn't think anybody would like it. I let some of my own students read it, my 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And they were really, really good. I was nervous. I mean, I sent manuscripts to New York. I was more nervous having my own students read this book. But they had great ideas. One kid said, well, okay, so he's got this magic pen. What happens if he loses it? Because that happens in middle school. Yeah, that's a good point. So I had to make it magic so it appears like his pocket. Another girl said, the title of the book doesn't work because the original title was Son of the Sea God. And she said, you can't do that. It gives away who his dad is too soon. And I was like, oh yeah. And so I renamed it The Lightning Thief. I sent it off to the publishers. I used a fake name because I was kind of embarrassed. So I came up with this pseudonym, Ransom Reese, if you're curious. And I sent it off. I didn't expect anybody to publish it. Well, almost immediately, 7 different publishers wanted to publish the book. It went through this big auction. They were all bidding on it. And Hyperion Disney finally picked it up, and they were the winning bidder, and they were so excited. They said, we have a great idea for the Percy Jackson books, and we want the first title, the first cover, to look like that. Oops.
Ew. No.
There we go.
Do not want.
Right? Yeah.
Somebody on Tumblr can make it a better edit.
That is kind of boring. Can't do something else. So their second try was this.
It's even worse. It does.
This actually was the cover. It was published with this at the very beginning in 2005. If you went in the bookstore, look for the Lightning Thief, that's what it looked like. The cover artist was somebody who was used to designing video game covers.
I could tell.
And his idea was to have all the monsters jumping out, which is kind of interesting. We have Medusa, we have the